Welcome to the PFO channel. I'm Jim. We're pretty excited about a new tool we've got for the homestead here. It's sitting right out here in front of me if you zoom out a little bit. Everybody's been telling me, Jim, you gotta get a side-by-side. They're the greatest thing, especially with all that acreage you got out there in the sugar bush. Well, I've been doing the chores around here for over 30 years now at this homestead. And for the last 20 of them since, well, 2001, we've been doing it all with a Honda 450 Foreman, and it has really been a workhorse around here for us. But the older I get, the less comfortable it is for me to get on and off that thing. And I hate to admit it, but after plowing our whole driveway on that straddle type ride configuration, it's just not comfortable anymore. So that, and the fact that the shifting on that Honda, putting it in reverse, really hurts. And the same arthritis in my hands that has already caused me to hang up my violin and my cello is making it harder and harder for me to work that reverse shift mechanism they've got on that thing. And by the time I get done plowing with that, between my hands and my hips, it's just not as much fun as it used to be to use that thing. So I did my research and I ended up choosing a Kubota RTV X900 side-by-side. The RTV, that stands for Rugged Terrain Vehicle. And I'll share with you the reasons why I bought this. Now, interestingly, I didn't buy a new one. Just like with my cars, there's not a single car in my driveway that I bought new. In my lifetime, I've only bought 2 vehicles brand new from a dealer. And I didn't regret either of those purchases, but for the most part, I prefer to let somebody else take a beating on the depreciation. From what I can see, the same thing pretty much goes for side-by-sides. Brand new ones depreciate pretty quickly once you haul them off the lot. So I started watching the Facebook Marketplace. You know, a lot of times you can find a really good deal. You have to be patient though when you're shopping the used market. There's just not the availability or the selection, the features that you're looking for, the makes and the models. One of the things that we do when we're searching for a high dollar item particularly, we expand the area that we're willing to shop. And this particular purchase was no exception. We ended up driving, well, it was a 10-hour drive. Now granted, that was in a horrible winter snowstorm, and normally that drive should have taken us 8 hours, and it was just miserable driving the whole way. And I was hauling a trailer. We lived and we didn't wreck anything. So after hauling this thing all the way across 4 states in terrible winter weather, it was so caked with salt, it was just pathetic looking. So I put on my rain gear and took it up to the local do-it-yourself car wash. And I think it was, I don't know, it was 12, I think it was 14 degrees Fahrenheit that day. And that was one miserable car wash, but I got it cleaned up pretty well. If you notice the details right now, it's already pretty dirty. The ground has softened up and the sap is flowing out in the sugar bush. And we've already pressed this thing into service in hauling sap in out of the sugar bush. Let me tell you the features that attracted me to this particular unit when I was searching Facebook Marketplace, and they were attractive enough to lure me across 4 states. One of the things that I liked about it was that it had a snowplow on it already. It had the 6-foot Boss snowplow. It's the electric hydraulics, and it's all the self-contained, a quick attach. I don't know if you can see in this camera angle, there's the bracket on the front. I dropped the plow off on the other end of the workshop here to put it into sugar bush mode. You can see in the back here, I've got the sap tank strapped into place. I've got a 120 quart cooler that we use. But the day we brought this thing home, there was a foot of snow on the ground when I got here. So I literally backed it off the trailer and plowed with it. The minute it hit the ground, I was working it. And I've been working it hard ever since. One of the things that it has is a nice big bed. Usually the beds have a tilt function. One of the things I liked about this particular unit is the fact that this is a hydraulic dump bed. They're not all hydraulic dump beds. Not even all the Kubotas have a hydraulic dump bed. Some of them you have to tip it by hand, and they have the hinges strategically located just off center so that you don't have to grunt and break your back to get the thing to lift and dump if you have a heavy load in there. But this has a hydraulic dump bed, which I prefer because I prefer it. Do I need reasons for preferring it? This is my video. I just wanted a hydraulic dump bed. Now, as you can see, this doesn't have a roof or a windshield, and that's just luck of the draw. The one I found didn't have either of those things, but they weren't on my must-have list. I wouldn't mind putting a roof on this thing, but it is kind of nice to be able to look up and see if I'm clearing the branches as I'm going through the woods. And I don't know, the the snow, when I was plowing that snow the other day, if I went a little too fast, some of that overspray or some of the snow dust was coming up over the plow and coming in my face. That wasn't the most pleasant thing, but I can live with that. So I didn't really care one way or another if it had a windshield and a roof. I don't like enclosed cabs. I didn't buy an enclosed cab on the mini excavator, and I don't want an enclosed cab on this. I'm okay in a car, but on something this little, I don't like the idea of being fully enclosed. I'm going to chalk that up to claustrophobia, because I can't think of any other reason other than maybe it'd get real hot in the summertime. And so cab, glass, roof, none of that was a consideration. Well, one of the things my wife never liked about the Honda four-wheeler was that it was extremely difficult to steer. So difficult, in fact, that I don't believe she ever drove the thing in the 20 years we owned it. It's an all-time four-wheel drive, and when you're trying to turn that, you're fighting against that front drive mechanism. The result is it's extremely hard to steer, and it's got a very, very wide turning radius, and it seems heavy when you're driving it, especially if you're maneuvering on our trails out in the woods. Some of the places out there is like threading a needle. And in fact, when I bought this, one of the first things I had to do is, with the plow on the front, I took it out through the woods and marked the trees that had to come out in order to widen the trail up just enough to be able to weave this bigger machine through with the wider plow. The plow on this is 6 foot, and the plow on the Honda that I've been using all these years is 4 foot. And I do plow the woods trails because we rely on those to bring firewood in throughout the winter, and also I want to have it clear in the spring when the sap starts flowing, because the sap starts flowing before the snow is melted. And if I've got an accumulation of snow out there, I can't get to the sugar bush. So I keep those trails plowed every time we get a significant storm all winter long. One of the things then that was really important to us on a side-by-side is that my wife be able to drive it, and that means power steering. Now, a lot of the units have power steering available, but in some of them, it's more common than others. For whatever reason, it seems like most of the Kubotas I've seen, they all seem to have power steering. Now, don't quote me on that. I'm sure there's some out there, if you go old enough and find particular models, I'm sure there's some that don't have power steering. I think I watched the market for most of a year before we discovered this one and bought it. And during that time, I would say that almost all the Kubotas I saw come up for sale had power steering, and certainly the minority of all the other brands had power steering. But when we were shopping, what I considered comparable models were like the Polaris Rangers, the Honda Pioneer, the Kawasaki Mule, and there's the Bobcat. I don't know what they call the Bobcat. I considered everything out there, everything that showed up on the Facebook Marketplace for sale that was not one of the Trail Runner varieties. I considered it, and what I would do is I would see it for sale in the marketplace, and then I would go Google it and learn everything I could about it, and either save it in my list or dismiss it out of hand. And one of the things that quickly got them dismissed was if it did not have power steering. One of the other considerations was the fuel injection. I like the fuel injection, and a lot of the older units and even some of the lower end units, even today, don't have fuel injection. I didn't feel strongly about gasoline versus diesel, but the fact that the diesel has fuel injection, I was a fuel systems engineer for 30 years. So if I can choose fuel injection over carburetor, I will. So far, other than having to stock up on yet another kind of fuel in my workshop, I've got gas cans all over the place. I got kerosene cans for my space heater, and now I've got diesel cans sitting around for this. But beyond that, and getting used to the noise, I haven't seen any downside to owning the diesel, and I suspect that the longer I own it, the downsides won't become apparent. It will be the upsides that become apparent. That's what I'm hoping on anyway. Oh, and one thing I really liked about this is it already has seat belts on it. I had to add seat belts to the mini excavator recently, and check out the video if you're interested in that. But it was nice to see that this already has seat belts. So I liked that. Another thing I like about this, my throat's getting dry. Speaking of my throat's getting dry, it's nice to have some cup holders on this thing. That's something that the Honda four-wheeler never had. One thing that this doesn't have that I noticed as I was backing it off the trailer when I got home is there's no rear mirrors. It's not the easiest thing to turn around and get a look behind you on this thing. So I'm going to have to add some mirrors for sure. Another thing I like about it, it also has a 1,500-pound trailer towing capacity. When I'm using the mini excavator and I need to load dirt onto that trailer and haul it away, I had been using the Honda four-wheeler, but I think that was really pushing the limit on that. This will handle that much more easily with that 1,500-pound trailer towing capacity. So those are some of the reasons why I settled on shopping for a Kubota RTV 900. I think their biggest one is an 1100, and when I started shopping for the used ones, I thought, okay, I'll take an 1100 or a 900, whatever I find first. But I definitely wanted the Plow. In my opinion, besides not taking a beating on the depreciation from buying a new one, the single best reason for buying a used machine like this is because you can typically find one where the previous owner has already put some accessories on it, and those tend to not get priced into it very effectively. For example, this Plow that's on here, it's a hydraulic tilt, it's got hydraulic down pressure, and the lift, that's a high-end snow plow for this UTV. I've seen those selling for $5,500, I think new. The price I paid for this machine with the Plow is about on par with all the other ones I saw for sale with no plow. And this also had another huge advantage to everything else I saw in the market, and that is the number of hours. This thing, when I bought it, this is a 2013, so it's 12 years old already, but it had less than 50 hours, 50, less than 50 hours on it, and I think less than 130 miles. 50 hours on one of these things is almost nothing. But on the other hand, it's got just enough hours that it has been tried and tested, and it's not a lemon. I don't know if there is such a thing as lemons in Kubota side-by-sides or any other side-by-sides for that matter. I don't know if that same phenomenon happens in these kind of machines as it does in automobiles, where every now and then you get one that is just a pooch, a real piece of junk right from the get-go. But with 50 hours on it, you know at least it has been run around the block a few times and the bugs worked out of it. When I was shopping, the only thing I saw with that kind of hours on it would be like a current model year, but it would be from 25,000 up into the 30s. I paid less than 12,000 for this with the Plow on it. So I'm really looking forward to using this thing around the homestead. I'm sure we're going to get a lot of use out of it. And one of the things I like already about it is my wife can ride along with me when we run out to collect sap. You know, it just wasn't safe for her to ride on the four-wheeler. You're not supposed to ever take a passenger on those. And it's over a quarter mile from the house out to the sugar bush. So she's going to really like being able to ride with me. We will spend a lot of time side by side. Funny how that works. So patience paid off once again, and we got another Facebook Marketplace score, and I'm really happy with this purchase, and I'm sure that this is going to be a very worthwhile tool to have around the homestead. We bought this with our own money. I am not associated with Kubota in any way, and I'm not saying that you ought to buy one. In fact, if you wanted to buy one, you're probably not going to find a deal like I found, but just some things to consider if you're in the market for a side-by-side. Hey, let me know if you got any comments or questions about this thing or any insight. This is my first side-by-side that I've ever owned. It's my first diesel that I've ever owned. So let me know in the comments what you have to say about it. Thanks a lot for watching. PFO channel out.